you seeking guidance on your spiritual journey? Need help with a vexing problem? Missing a loved one and looking for answers? Look no further than Psychic Insights, a small trusted psychic service offering mediums, psychics, and spiritual coaching. This service is managed by Hollis Taylor, a gifted psychic medium, astrologer, and a compassionate coach. We are dedicated to helping you navigate your spiritual awakening. At Psychic Insights, we provide medium readings and psychic insight to help you plan for tomorrow and make choices for today. Find the support you need, compassionate grief coaching, and astrological insights to help you spiritually grow and transform. Our professional services include well-managed schedules, recorded sessions, and reliable psychic mediums ready to facilitate your transformational experience. Discover more at psychicinsights.life.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. It's good to have you with me today. I'm glad that you're awake, Sarisha. Does it usually happen while you're sleeping? We try to make them at different times. You're welcome. I appreciate beauty as well. You probably have a Libra placement, huh? Sometimes Libra can be very much a placement in that way. I'm glad you didn't miss it, Dawn. I'm glad you're here, Dawn Oxford and Moonglow. I'm glad you're here, Yada, Marie. I'm so glad you're here. You know, this is like one of my favorite lives to do because I get to talk about something that's really special to me. And that, hi, Monica. I'm glad you're here. So just in case you don't know who I am, I'm the admin for the Medium group, Mediums Communicating with the Dead, Deep Grief and Loss. I'm also the admin for Mystical Connections. I'm the founder and owner manager of PsychicInsights.life, and where I have all sorts of, I try to bring forth all sorts of reputable mediums and psychics for you to connect with, um, in a service that I would want to connect with, like with things like reliability and accountability and fair prices and where people are taken care of and things like that. And so that's Psychic Insights. And of course, I'm Hollis Taylor, and I have my own website, divineandrogen.com. And of course, you can book with me. You can book with me at divineandrogen.com, or you can book with me at Psychic Insights. Doesn't matter. It goes to the same scheduling place where you can, set up a reading with me. And one of my favorite, okay, now I am a medium, so I do communicate with the dead, and I can do regular, what we would call a pretty standard medium reading. And let me tell you how I came to this astrology death reading. The death chart reading that I do is usually, so sometimes people that do a death astrology focus very much on like predicting your death, and most people are kind of like, I don't really want to know when I'm going to die. Like, okay. But what I found, welcome Sarah and Brooke. I am doing much better now, just because I know people are going to ask. Welcome Lisa and Lori. My son is okay, and I'm gonna bring that into today's discussion. Okay. So what you learn when you learn death astrology is that when a destined death happens, when it was supposed to happen, there are certain markers on the chart that sort of indicate that. And now, of course, with suicide, they don't always show up. It depends on what kind of suicide often. And some suicides are sort of destined in a way. Or it's at least when the universe says, okay, so you don't want to quit doing drugs. All right, well, you can jump out if you want. And some people do, right? And that's sad, but it happens. So, as a medium, I also was learning astrology and I was studying it pretty intensely. And I also started to learn death astrology. And I started putting the two together. And when I started putting the two together, I started to recognize that astrology, the death astrology, could help answer some of the really hard questions that mediums often get. So, I have 30 years experience as a psychic medium. I've been doing maybe even more than that. Like I just say 30 because it's in the middle. I started, talking to spirits and stuff when I was a kid. I would go in haunted houses and, tell them to leave. Um I thought I knew what I was doing. It was actually really cute if you can imagine like an 8-year-old going in and going, "It's time for you to leave now," and clapping my hands or something like that, okay? Um, I was young. Um, anyway, and then when I got to be older, I started to realize that I was talking to spirits. And then when my father died, who I was very, very close to, I started to communicate with him, and then I started doing readings for other people. I'm still friends with the first person I ever did a reading for. I was 25 years old. Um, and that was online. I did do that reading online. So that's really fascinating, right? And then I've also been really drawn to astrology. And once when I was very young, I was probably about 16 or 17, maybe 18. I was walking along with some friends on this pretty popular college town. And I said there was a sign that said psychic medium, astrologer, and tarot readings. And I was like, that's going to be me someday, I said to my friends. And that day, I also bought an astrology book, the only astrology book you'll ever need. That's the name of it. The only astrology book you'll ever need. And I started studying my own chart, studying my son's chart, and I studied for years and years on and off. I started to learn how to do astrology natal chart readings and things like that. And then when the pandemic hit, I started taking a couple of classes a week with my spouse, Bright Hawk, and the two of us would take classes together, astrology. And in the meantime, the COVID pandemic is happening, and I'm also having health problems, so I can't really do a whole lot physical things. So mostly I'm kind of stuck to my bed watching TV, right? And so I'm watching these classes because I'm a Virgo and I like to learn. And and I started the medium group. The medium group I was called to start that medium group. Monica, I'll get into my son in just a moment because it's gonna tie into this conversation we're having right now. Um, and so I opened this medium group and I was doing readings. And you bought that book too, Maggie. See, it's a very popular book, right? Okay. But now I take classes with very famous astrologers like Nadia Shaw and Christopher Renstrom and famous astrologers. Okay. Um, and I've been to conferences and where you can learn lots. And I anyway, so I started doing all the psychic medium readings and I was getting really strong at astrology. And a lot of people were like kind of seeing me for mediumship, but then coming to me for astrology. And I just took a death astrology class and I was like, I wonder. And I started to look at people's, so I would ask the date in my medium readings of their person's death. And I would start looking at it and I started to see all sorts of things. And now astrology is a little bit of intuition, okay? And so I started to see how the person's death was especially destined death, like, oh, he just suddenly died of a heart attack, or he had cancer, or Suicides come up a little bit different. I'll get into that soon. But things like that, I would look at the chart and I could see the destiny coming in. And then I took medical astrology courses. I've taken numerous at this point, and I've started to apply the medical astrology too, which helps us tie into the death astrology, which helps us see how this all was sort of in your map. Because your natal astrology chart is your map to life. It tells you who and what you are meant to be. If you ever wondered, like, why am I here and why are these people in my life? Hi, Andrea. It's great to see you. I've missed you. Hi, Georgette. It's great to see you. And I will be addressing my son in just a minute. And so I know a lot of you know that what happened the last time I was going to have this broadcast, my son fell out. Okay. And I knew at the moment that Uranus and Mars were conjunct. In fact, right just before that, Trump had gotten shot, right? And somebody shot his ear off. Um anyway, and then that happened and I was like, "Oh, that's Uranus Mars conjunct. Surprise." And now my son's fallen out. Surprise. Look at that. I hate when it does that. um anyway, it was like surprise, surprise. Okay. And so all these surprises started to come up and I was like, "Oh, that's Mars and Uranus." And Mars is about fast action. Um it can sometimes be like the god of war and things like that. But sometimes, often, because it's such a fast mover, we can see how it triggers some health events. So, on the airplane to my son's bedside, who was at the time in a medically induced coma, which is when they give you drugs because they were suspicious that he had a cardiac arrest, um, and that he didn't have oxygen to his brain, so they were concerned about him having brain damage. So they put him under these drugs and they freeze his body, which is a very uncomfortable thing, which is why they kind of put you out like anesthesia, but they do this for a couple of days. Okay? And they try to get your brain to not have brain damage, essentially. But as I was looking at the chart in my airplane ride out there, as I was like, I'm not sure he had cardiac arrest because nothing here is showing that it's time for him to die. Nothing is showing. Now, it's showing that he might have an event that could be life changing forever. And while Mercury is on his Chiron, which is about genetic conditions we inherit. And the more I looked at the chart, the more I was like, And then I get to the hospital, and after a couple of days, I was still pretty sure that he, number one, didn't have brain damage, number two, hadn't gone into cardiac arrest, and number three, the freezing of the body and having him in that coma was not necessarily necessary, and that we could probably bring him out. So I pulled that string and said, we're going to bring him out. And so we did. And he's perfectly fine, no brain damage, nothing. Just as I said, he didn't end. I had many other psychics check in just in case I was in mom denial or something. And several other psychics in the group said, no, he's not, that he doesn't have any brain damage. He wants to come out. And I was like, okay, great. So as I started to do that, I told the doctors to bring him out, and they did. And he proved to be just fine. I got him transferred because the genetic condition that probably knocked him out was triggered, right? Remember I said Mercury was on Chiron of genetic conditions, because there's a genetic condition that came from my father and my grandmother called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And it's a mouthful, right? So it's also known as HCM. And it's a genetic condition and people specialize in it. And I knew that this little nothing hospital, it's very teeny little hospital, didn't have specialists in it, and he's in Pennsylvania, so we needed to go to Hershey. So I needed to get him to Hershey. And that's what the astrology said. The astrology said he needs to be seen by a specialist, higher higher knowledge, higher knowing, because of the placements in his chart. I knew that he had to have higher, more educated people. And so we went there and they validated that he probably did not have cardiac arrest, and he probably fell out, maybe hit his head a little hard, and he was maybe had a concussion or something. But he fell out, which this genetic condition can make you fall out. Now, it also says that because he passed out, it's called syncope, that this genetic condition has a risk of sudden cardiac death. Okay. And it's very scary. Okay. My grandmother just died one day when my dad was 12. Okay. And we don't really know why, but what we do know is that young people that pass out syncope, that experience syncope before the age of 40, and my son is only 30, often have sudden cardiac death. So they don't want him to die. So they've put a life vest on him until they can implant a device under his arm that will save his life. Now, let's break this down astrologically. Mercury was moving over his Chiron at the time of this happening. And as this all unfolded, Mercury was in its shadow, which is it's about to go retrograde. So it's passing over an area that will be resolved by the time Mercury's done its retrograde. Okay. And so it's passing over the Chiron and it's saying, hey, this is your genetic, and Mercury delivers messages. That's why during Mercury retrograde, sometimes we have communication problems. Sometimes we might struggle with devices, electronics, right? Okay. Because Mercury affects all of those things because they have to do with communication, like computers, like your phone, right? Like transportation, your car. Okay. So those are the kinds of things. And so as Mercury started to go retrograde, James started to realize that my son, that he wouldn't be able to get the implant until September. And I looked at the astrology and I was like, but James, that's actually good because Mercury will be out of retrograde, and that's good. And so I could help him navigate through this experience. So first of all, I knew he wasn't going to die. Just by looking at the astrology, I was pretty damn sure he wasn't going to die. I do thousands of death charts all the time. I do them all the time. It is the number one reason people come to see me, because I can look at the death of your loved one and say it was destined, or that was a terrible accident. Okay. Or that it's unfortunate that they chose suicide, okay? But they kind of chose to leave this world in a way, okay? But I can help you find out if it was destined, okay? And not all, some suicides are destined, okay? And I can look at the chart and I can help you understand your relationship with them. Were you twin flames? Were you soulmates? Were you how are you connected? What was supposed to be, right? Okay. And where are you going? And how will that unfold? And what were your past lives? And what will your future lives be? And what does this death have to do with you? What was it triggering in you? What was it meant to bring forth in you? Maybe you're like many mediums and you're supposed to get in touch with your spiritual side. Maybe you're supposed to be a medium. Maybe you're supposed to be a psychic. Maybe you're supposed to get more in touch with your spiritual side. Whatever it is, um, the astrology chart will show me. And that is the magic of astrology, death astrology, is that I can help answer some of the hardest questions that mediums are faced with during a reading, right? So if you have questions, please put them down in the comments. I appreciate your questions. And the beautiful thing about death astrology reading a death chart is that I can answer those hard questions like, why? Why did this happen now? Why now? And was this meant to be? And why do I have to live alone for the next 20 years? Am I supposed to live alone? Okay. So those are the kind of things that we want to sort of think about when it comes to death astrology. I I I don't always sometimes some people can handle it right away, like right after someone dies, sometimes. Okay. Um yeah, it depends on who you are. I think the most beautiful thing about death astrology is that it answers those hard to answer questions. Monica Ann Jennings, she said, my ex-husband passed in February. We were together 36 years. I was just over all my sister first. Did your sister pass away first, Monica? Is that what you're saying? Um, and it sounds like whatever happened with your husband passing after 36 years, you guys probably made a soul arrangement for that. You probably agreed to that before you were born. You just don't remember because you're not supposed to, because there's some sort of soul experience in losing your husband that's likely to come through. And that's kind of what the astrology can help us answer. What are you supposed to learn from this? Right? Can feel really hard, right? And you had just gotten over your sister. So you were dealing with a lot of death back to back, right? So I want to look at your chart, Monica, your birth chart, and I want to look at it and say, wow, Monica, well, your husband died this time, your sister died this time. And both of these times it's been influencing this part of you. And that's probably what the universe is communicating to you. Essentially, I want to interpret the messages from the other side, from the universe. I want to interpret your map, your life map, and say, what was it about your experience that you're supposed to take away from this? Um, it can be really complicated. So great. I'm glad we're talking about suicide, Maggie. I'm glad you're bringing that up. Um, I bet it has been next to impossible to accept your mom's suicide. No doubt in my mind. Um, it can be really hard to comprehend. You can feel like it's your fault. You can feel like, what did I not pay attention to, right? All kinds of things like that. The thing about suicide and astrology that I think is most helpful is I can tell you what their mental health was at the time of their passing. I can tell you, I can try to help you understand where they were coming from at the moment of their choice to leave this planet. And yes, suicide can absolutely be destiny. And sometimes it's kind of like, I don't always want to call it destiny. I want to call it an option. So it's sort of like when you go to the doctors and the doctor says, you smoke, and if you keep smoking, you're going to die of lung cancer. In that moment, you have an option to quit smoking, right? Or to keep smoking. And it'll probably lead to death, right? Which is kind of passive suicide, right? And sort of the same thing happens with what we would call, normal suicide with like drugs or violent suicide is where they shoot themselves or something. Um, those moments I feel like are opportunities. Like the universe says, is it really that hard? Do you want to jump through the window now? You don't want to wait and see if this resolves. You want to jump through now? And I think some people choose to jump through, Maggie. I think they do. I will tell you that even the destined suicides, the spirit on the other side usually says, I regret it. I shouldn't have done it. Okay. And I think I've never met a spirit that was happy about their death, that committed suicide. Um, and suicide, but I think that's what's helpful in the astrology is understanding what was going on with them emotionally at the time. What might have driven them to do it? Was it just a moment and they just happened to have the gun available, or the drug available, or were they overindulging in the drug because they wanted to escape from their reality, or what was it? Okay, and so we can really dive deep into that in the death astrology. And I think that's the most valuable part with suicides. Murders can be similar in that way, and we can get into that in a different way. But murders tend to be more like, I can sometimes see the karmic agreement between the person that was murdered and the person that murdered. I can see some, especially if you have the murderer's, like, birthday and stuff. Even if you don't know their time of birth, as long as you know your loved one's time of birth, even if you don't, I can still probably get an answer. It's more accurate if we have the time of birth. Um, oh, okay. So, Brittany, great question. Um, she said, I may have missed this part, but if we book a death astrology meeting, do you do it all on the call or figure it out the chart prior and study it beforehand? No, Brittany, I don't need to study it beforehand because I work on intuition, and also I just find that my astrology is better if I don't overthink it. Um, Sometimes I might catch something halfway. I'll be like, "Oh, I didn't see this before, but check it out." Usually have your spirit, your loved one behind me kind of saying, "Hey, look at Jupiter. Look at Jupiter. Look at Mars. Look at Mars. Look at Chiron." Okay? And they kind of show me where to look. Um they show me where, like, especially to answer your questions or to help clear something up that you're not even expressing to me, like you thought it was your fault and here's proof that it wasn't. um Things like that. Okay, and I do share the chart with you. I show you what I'm reading, and I'll say things like the chart shows, or Mercury's here and that means, or I might say, you know he's really pushing me towards Uranus. He's really pushing me towards Mars, and really saying that he wants you to understand that this was a quick decision. Okay. So sometimes I'll tell you that I'm sensing your loved one's spirit, and sometimes I'll say that it's the chart, and sometimes it's a mixture of both. Okay. And that's pretty, and let me also include a death astrology reading the way I'm doing it. No one else, I have yet to find anyone else that does it. Um, they're one of a kind. No one else, I know no one else in this group does it. Um, and I'm not bragging, but I did come up with it. I didn't copy from someone else. I learned astrology, I learned mediumship, and I put the two together. That's what happened. Um, and it's the reading itself most people say it's like nothing I ever expected before. Okay, so most of the time they don't expect it to oh, I'm supposed to scroll across the bottom, but it didn't do it, huh? Um, but most of the time they expect it. Most of the time people are not sure what to expect, right? Okay. And then they're like, wow, okay, Hollis, this was something. And you'll see if you look death chart readings or astrology, Hollis Taylor in the group, if you search that, you'll see the reviews. People usually say stuff like, um, I've never had a reading like this before, um, and things like that. Okay, so that's how it usually goes. That's how it usually goes. Okay, let's see. We have another question. Do your loved ones on the other side get upset about you thinking of committing suicide? Hmm, I think that's a tough question, Surisha. Suicide is never really a good answer to anything, because most of us have experienced really hard times, really shitty times, okay? Really, really hard times. And sometimes they get worse. Um, and sometimes it feels like the worst thing that's ever happened to you, right? Um, but death is never the answer. When it's your time to, what you learn from astrology is that when it's your time to die, you will die, regardless of what you do. There are some people that will die sooner because of the choices they make, and those are the opportunities that I talked about. Do your loved ones get angry? I wouldn't say that they get angry or upset, but a lot of times spirits that have committed suicide will come through as guardians to people with mental health. So they'll try to stop you from committing suicide. And if you are a person that has committed suicide, you'll notice that maybe doesn't happen the way you wanted it to happen, or it doesn't go the way you wanted it to go or thought it might go. And then as a result, you're kind of like, oh, and that might be because your loved one is stopping it. So no, I don't think that they get upset. I think that they might interfere to stop you from doing it, or try to help you get the help and support that you need. So they might put certain people in your lives that can help you not feel like that ending your life is the answer. And ending your life is never the answer. I'm just going to say that it's never the answer. Even the souls that it's destined for, once they commit suicide and they get on the other side, they learn that it's never the answer. That's what the soul sort of that's what the soul swallows. Okay. That's what the soul learns from suicide. When a person does commit suicide, they are learning that that's not the answer. Okay. I'm curious what my uncle's would show. He passed April 28th, 22nd. There was a medical mistake. I could look, Stephanie, but I have to put that in a software, and I also need his time and I need his birth chart. So if we know the time, we don't have to have the time, but the time makes it more accurate. It goes from 80% accurate to like 95% accurate, okay? And so same thing goes for the birth chart. The birth chart will be more accurate if we have their time of birth. So I need his birth chart and I need his past, the day that he passed chart. Is not something I can really do live here. Maybe in the future I'll try to do some celebrities live, or I can get some of you to volunteer that information, because it's, I'd have to let people see birthdays and things. It's not usually something you want live broadcasted in a bunch of groups, okay? But the thing about it is that I could look and I could tell you if it was the medical mistake. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Nanona in the mediums group asked, Nanona, how do I know if I have the gift? Well, Nanona, it's in your birth chart. It's in your astrology birth chart. It's there. It's totally there. It will be marked with the moon, it will be marked with Neptune, and it will be marked with your zodiac signs, like your rising sign and your sun sign. It will just depend on how your astrology chart looks. If I do a natal chart reading for you, I can tell you if you have particular gifts, and everybody has gifts, but I can tell you exactly what those gifts are and how to express them. Okay. So now Tiffany is asking a good question here. She's over in the group, so I have to like copy and paste the thing. She's saying, that's not what I meant to do. Okay. Okay. So Tiffany is saying, my love Scott passed in December. I've been told we are twin flames. He died from an overdose. I don't believe it was meant to happen, and I'm so empty and lost. I'm sorry, Tiffany. Um, You probably are twin flames or some other version of that, or some other, soul contract of some kind. Um, I'm sorry that he died of an overdose. And I can tell you what his emotional state was in the moment. Was he just overindulging in drugs, or did he intend to pass? And that's what I can tell you. I can answer that question in death astrology. And it's just so fascinating to watch me unfold that. So if you can get Scott's birth date, time, and place, and then of course the day that he passed, hopefully the time if you can. If you can't, that's okay. And then just bring your birth date, time, because then I also put your two charts together, and that's how I tell if you're twin flames or soulmates or soul contract, or what exactly is your connection. And I can see that in the charts. That's why I put them together. She also said he has had spiritually gifted people reach out to me, and I'm trying to find the purpose of all of it. Well, the astrology will teach you the purpose of this whole experience, Tiffany. And I think that's where, like, our current culture doesn't really realize the impact of astrology. 100 years ago, everybody looked at their astrology chart because your doctor looked at it for you. They used it to diagnose health problems, or to recognize whatever health thing you were struggling with. And it's just been in like the last like 100 years that humans have stopped paying attention to their astrology charts, even though it's an ancient thing from way back in the Egyptians used astrology. Okay, astrology's in the Bible. Okay, like that's how they found Jesus, by following the stars. Okay, those were astronomers. They were astrologers. Astrologers back then, when Jesus was alive, were astrologers. Okay, and so they were following the stars, and that's how they knew that, and that's why they named him a prophet. Okay, and so there are lots of astrology has played a strong role in pointing out prophets, in helping us understand life and guide us through life and help us understand why things are happening. And no wonder these days everybody's confused. Kids are coming out of school going, I don't know what I want to do. Well, maybe if we spent a little time on their astrology chart, maybe we could figure out what would be good for them, right? Maybe if we spent a little bit more time connecting with the stars and the astrology, we could better guide our lives and come to understand the hardest of experiences, right? So I understand, I hear what you're going through there, Tiffany. And I encourage you to come get a reading with me. That it's a one of a kind reading. You won't have anything else like that. Nothing else like that. Jess says, my mom was sedated on a ventilator, and I was just hoping she heard my dad and I talking to her, and if she knew our dog was on her in the bed in the ICU right before we pulled her off of life support. Also, my dad had just left visiting my mom in the regular hospital, and apparently 5 to 10 minutes after he left, she became a rapid response with 104 temperature, altered mental status, and rushed to the ICU. And you know what, Jess? I wonder how she felt just before too. And I'm telling you, the astrology will answer that. So if we could have her birth time, date, and place, and her death time and place, and some and date, sorry, date and place and time if you have it, and also bring your chart. You can also bring your dad's chart, and I'll look at their entire connection and see how that all unfolds, and I can absolutely answer that question for you, how your mom felt right before that happened. It's such a powerful reading. There are hundreds of reviews in the group. I don't even know how many are in there. And you will find that the astrology is one of the most powerful readings that I have. um and it's really hard for me to do live here for you guys now, um because it's just because I need all of this information, like time of birth, time of death. If you don't have the time, I can do it without it. It will be more like 80 to 85% accurate. It's more in the 90% accurate. And just for your information, scientists have proven that most good, reputable mediums are about 70% accurate. Okay, just plain mediumship is about 70, 75% accurate. Astrology is a little bit more accurate as a tool, but it is an ancient tool, right? It's been around way longer than mediumship has been around. It's been around, it's ancient, right? We've been listening to the stars for many, 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 many centuries. And so it's more like, even without the time of birth, it'll be slightly less accurate, but it's still super accurate. Okay. And okay. Ava asked, what about those who don't want to die but are given something like morphine? And that will show in their chart. We will see that in their chart. Absolutely. We'll see that. Aviate, we'll see that. We'll see that in the chart. We'll see that they didn't want to die. We'll see that they really struggled with it. Maybe they held on for a long time. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's some sort of medical reason that will come around. I'm not sure who's given morphine to die if they don't want to die. Some people are very sick and asked to have extra morphine in order to die, like to sort of put them to sleep type of deal, like we do with our animals. Sometimes I think we're more compassionate to our animals when we let people live with diseases that are, unfortunate, right? Okay, when they're just barely living, like on life support, or like I knew a guy with ALS and the only way you could communicate was with his eyes, and he wanted to pass, so he kept asking for morphine until he did. And I think that that's fair. Okay. Okay, so Avit said those doctors who say there's no need for a person to live anymore and this is a necessary death. Sort of like what I was just saying, Avit. I get what you're saying because I've worked a lot in the medical. I used to be a nurse. I do death midwifery, which is when I help people pass when it's their time. Yeah, I think sometimes they don't want to pass, but they have to. I think that's absolutely valid and could happen, and it will show in the chart. It will show that conflict. It will show the conflict of one time a man was in a coma, and if he wanted to live, but if he came back, he would have been, you know, paralyzed, and he didn't want to burden his family with that, right? So I think sometimes the soul has to make these unfortunate choices, but I can help you understand the bigger vision of that. Like, was there a past life influence bringing this in, or does this have something to do with a soul contract, or is there something in their soul that had to be learned in this lifetime about life and death, that they had to go through this experience in order to learn that lesson? Because all of us are here to become enlightened beings, and we're all evolving into something bigger and better. Hopefully we're all evolving into a better person, hopefully. And in each lifetime our souls need to sort of upgrade, if you will, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to learn certain lessons in our lives, and that's really what that's really what life is about. And I think that your astrology chart will lead you to that. Nonona asked if there's a good astrology book that you would recommend. Well, for a beginner, the only astrology book you'll ever need is really great. I would also, for beginners, recommend any books by Nadia Shah. Her name is NADIYIHSHAH. Nadia Shah. You can look her up. Currently, she's having some health issues, but she's really a powerful astrologer. She's one of my teachers. She even has like online classes you can take all the time. Sorry, your internet cut out, Brittany. Brittany loves how passionate I talk about astrology. I'll tell you what, Brittany, astrology has saved my life, and I can tell you all why. Astrology helped me realize that I am perfectly imperfect, that I am a perfect, imperfect reflection of the universe, that I was made this way on purpose, that I was made this way, and all the parts of me that I want to rub out or get rid of, are actually put there for a reason, and that I do those things for a reason. I was made that way for a reason. And when you start to realize that, when you start to study your own astrology chart, and if you check in on a regular basis, like once or twice a year, and get a natal chart reading, it's really good for you. You'll start to recognize that everything you're going through is not just for suffering. It's not just to make you suffer, right? Okay. It's also to have a larger meaning. Like my son's larger meaning to his entire experience of falling out might mean to save his life in the bigger grand scheme of things, right? So because the universe hears my prayers and his prayers, and me wanting to not see my grandchildren suffer the same trauma my father did by losing his mother. And so then therefore Mercury delivered the message and had me, mother, which also was shown in his chart, to come in and save his life. And that's literally what I did. I came in and made sure they knew about the heart condition and made sure he was seen by the proper specialists. And all of that was meant to happen. As hard as the entire damn thing was, I knew that it was destined, and I just had to look for the bigger answer. And that's how astrology saves your life. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. Okay? That's why, because it saves my life all the time. I'm sorry to hear about the person that you lost to Aviet. They don't usually feel any physical pain. And Aviet, I absolutely, you can share the live. And I'm happy to do a reading for your loved one there, and I'll record it and you can share it with anybody you want. That's true, Brittany. That's true, Brittany. There are other medications. Okay. Oh, you know why? Okay, so Dawn Oxford's actually asking a great question. I love this question. What a great question. Dawn said, I have never felt I aligned with my astrology sign. Why would that be? I don't really have the characteristics it says I should. And not that they're bad, right, Dawn? You're just like, but just doesn't apply. It's probably because your rising sign is stronger. And you may also want to check on the source of whatever information you got about that, because some astrology is kind of messed up. Everybody has their gifts. All zodiac is special in a way, but there's probably some things that are more dominant in your chart, Dawn, that overcome your sort of your sun sign. So when we talk about our astrology sign, that's just where the sun is. We all have Virgo in us. We all have Gemini in us. We all have Leo, and we all have Aquarius. It's just about where it is, what part of our lives does it play out, and how does it come out, and how strong is it? Are you more Aquarian? Are you more Virgo? Are you more Pisces? And those kinds of energies will be shown based on what planets are in there. So when we talk about our astrology sign in generic when we talk about astrology generically and we read our horoscope, you're usually reading for your sun sign. Where was the sun at the time of your birth? The thing is that once you get over 30, your rising sign, usually for everybody, gets stronger and stronger. So you actually become your rising sign, which is based on your time of birth. And your moon sign has more to do with your emotional outward. And if you're a Cancer moon, your Cancer moon is probably going to outdo any sun sign because Cancer's in its rulership. So your Cancer part of you is going to be more expressed. So if you're finding that you don't align with your astrology, just go get a reading, and and tell the reader that, and the reader can probably help you find out. If you come see me and you get a regular natal chart reading, Dawn, and I can tell you why that you feel that way, and I can tell you what horoscopes to listen to that will be more accurate. Okay? So that's very common, Dawn. You are not the only one. That's actually a very common thing, because just going on your sun sign is kind of stupid. It's like it's like chewing bubble gum. Not that it's wrong, it's just not very deep. It's not very it doesn't go very far. It's very surfacey, it's very shallow. Your rising sign and your moon sign and where your Saturn is and where Venus is and how they're all aspected and where's your Mars and those kinds of things, those are going to tell us about who you really are. Okay. And that's why we're all unique. Like if you're a Virgo and you meet another Virgo, that Virgo is not going to be exactly the same. No, because it's going to express differently in our charts. Okay. Um, oh boy. Okay. Is death astrology like soul contracts? Can you use death astrology to understand what someone held? Yes, you can. You can use I just need to ban somebody real quick. So death astrology, like soul contracts, it can show what the soul contract is. Okay, it can show us what your relationship is with that person, but it can also I can use medical astrology to find out what their health issue was. And if they passed, I can tell you why they passed in their physical body. We can put it together. By the time you tell me what happened and I tell you what the medical astrology is, we can easily put it together. Yes. But I can't predict someone's death, okay? Yes, Lori Harper asked, I asked if my mother-in-law of my husband's birth, and she said around 7:20. That's fine. 5 minutes is no big deal. Hours, yes. But if you even have like morning or evening or something like that, bring that forward because that can be really, really helpful. Monica said, I don't know the true day or time he passed, only the time and day he was found. That's okay, Monica. That's okay. The time and day that he is found is also very important. It's also an important day. So don't worry about that. And we can, what's more important, it would be his birthday. And I can put the two bits of information that we have. If you don't know the exact time is unknown, that's okay. As I've mentioned, what's more important is their birth time. Okay. Um, And thank you, Georgette. Georgette said I look wonderful. Moon Glow is fascinated at death astrology. And I appreciate all of your comments. I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you being part of this live today. I'm glad I could answer your question. Brittany said that explains so much. It's looking at the tip of the iceberg and ignoring the rest of it. Exactly, Brittany. Exactly. There's so much more to your astrology chart than just your sun sign. It's kind of silly, and that's why I'm like, don't base your relationship on like don't base like you're a Virgo and they're Sagittarius. Don't turn down a relationship because of that, okay? Because some places say that that's not a good combo. No, 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 no. We want to look at the two charts closely. Maybe they're in a cusp and they're actually a Capricorn. They're more Capricornian, or maybe your rising signs match, or maybe your nodes are on top of each other. And there's all kinds of other elements in relationship astrology as well, which is also part of what I'm doing. So when I'm doing a death chart reading for you at my website, I'm actually doing a mini natal chart reading for you, a mini natal chart reading for your loved one that's passed, and what we call a synastry reading, which is synastry, which is the relationship between two people or an event and a person. Okay, I'm doing all of that. And I'm also looking at their death. Okay, and so that's also a death chart reading. And I think that's what makes these readings so unique. And I I didn't know that this is what would come out of it. I just loved astrology and I happen to be a medium too. And I just put the two together and magic happens, right? So I'm really happy about that. What do you, so someone on Instagram asked, Carrie Ann asked, what do you think of Saturn in the 12th house? I think that Saturn in the 12th house is, first of all, you're not going to see your Saturn returns coming a mile away. So most things in the 12th house are hidden. The 12th house also may have to do with institutions, like hospitals and mental health places and other things like that. And with Saturn, that makes me think about the system and institutions as well. So that makes me think about some sort of like institution or hospitals or something to do with that, especially in your Saturn returns. Now, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking about that. It must be in your natal chart, I'm guessing. Saturn in the 12th house. Saturn in the 12th house is very much going to have a lot to do with that. Probably you may also restrict your own psychic abilities. So pay attention to that. I wonder if it's in any aspects to other things. And I wonder if it's retrograde, and I wonder what zodiac it's in. So those are kind of like my other questions for you over there on Instagram, Carrie Ann. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. And so Carrie Ann, maybe I could answer that for you. And so there's so much to astrology. There's so much in and out. Oh, I'm glad you got it fixed, Dawn. There's so much ins and outs. Like I just talked about Saturn in the 12th house, right? Like I said, the aspects is what the degrees are. It's away from other planets. If it's retrograde, if it's moving backwards, and other things, and right now Mercury is retrograde, in Virgo. So I just did a astrology report, Rainbow Soul Vodcast. So you can catch Rainbow Soul Vodcast on just about any platform. I do regular readings. My spouse and I and another person that I work with, his name is Lacrosse. We all do a astrology broadcast once a week. We try to do it once a week. Although, as you can imagine, with everything that happened with my son, I missed a couple of weeks. So I just recorded it. Should be released tomorrow. And essentially, that is the sort of prediction for the next week. Okay, so what's going to happen? What's the energies going to be like? And remember, the planets and the moon and the stars are moving all the time. And that's why getting a chart reading every year or twice a year is really good. Give it to yourself for your birthday. Getting a chart reading on a regular basis is a gift to yourself. It'll give you an idea of what the next year might hold for you, give you some ideas of some dates you might want to pay attention to. And if you're making any major decisions, you definitely want to check out your astrology chart, okay? And you just want to have an idea of what the energy would be like. No, I can't predict exactly what would happen. Just like when Uranus and Mars were conjunct and my son fell out, Uranus is about surprises. So, of course, I didn't know what the surprise was going to be, but I knew it was going to be a surprise. I just didn't know what. And Mars represents men, okay? And it's in Taurus, in my house of relationships, okay? So I was very like, boom, 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 boom. And then, of course, I've also knew that at the time my son's series is in my son's house of relationships, helping him to remember that maybe he does still need his mom even at 30 years old, okay? And also that Mercury was visiting his Chiron, and I've seen that, and about the genetic conditions, right? So these are the kinds of things that I might be able to see in your chart, that I might be able to say, hey, this is what's going on. If you have kids, I have 2 grandchildren. I know their charts and I look at them all the time. My son calls me and says, oh my God, Mom, I'm going to kill him. He won't clean his room, right? Like my son's frustrated because his little one won't clean his room or something, right? Okay. We all struggle with these things, right? And he's asking me how to help him, right? And I look at it and I go, it's very important, James, to my son, that you hold this boundary for this child right now, because right now they're learning something they will carry forth for the rest of their life. So you holding the boundary that he must listen and carry this forward is essential. Okay. So those are some examples of things that I can pull out from the astrology chart. Grandchildren, children, I can look at their astrology chart and tell you all about their personality. You have a teenager, that's about to graduate high school. This is a great this is a great gift for them, okay? Because it's like it's very it's like it can help someone get on track. It can help them recognize what they're, you know, it can help them recognize what kind of choices they might make in regards to career or relationships and stuff like that. Okay. So I hope that I've answered mostly everyone's questions. I've reviewed a couple times here. You're welcome, Tiffany. Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate that. And friends, just always remember one thing. This is a quote about astrology that a lot of people use. And I think that sometimes it reminds me of exactly when things go wrong, when things aren't easy. And I know a lot of you are struggling with grief. No doubt the universe is unfolding exactly as it should. And that is a reminder that as much as when things are really hard, that it's actually a gift, okay? That these things are hard, yes, but maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Just like I could see that everything my son had been through, the light at the end of the tunnel is maybe it saved his life in the future so that he would have this device, so that he would be alive for his children into his old age. He can live a long life with this, okay? And with this implant, it can make him live a normal life, just like you and just like anyone else, okay? And that's a gift. That's a gift. And maybe that's why this happened. And maybe this person passed for a reason. Maybe you're experiencing so much death in your life for a reason. Okay? So I just want to urge you, get your astrology chart checked out, whether it's by me or a different astrologer. I do all kinds of astrology readings, natal chart readings, and I'll look at the year ahead for you. I'll do synastry readings, you and your spouse, your loved one. I can do death chart readings where I'll do synastry, but I'll also look at their death, and I'll also look at your natal chart and how this is influencing you. And that's pretty much my strengths. And I hope that you are able to walk forward and just get, I have a little magnet that goes on my refrigerator that says, no doubt the universe is unfolding exactly as it should. So check that out. You can Google it. It's a very common quote. Anyway, my friends, I hope that you have a fantastic day. And I look forward to seeing some of you in a private recorded reading in the future, because I do record and send them all to you professionally so that you can have them going forward. Okay? All right, friends. Have a good day. Enjoy your Sunday evening, and may it go well for you, and may you be blessed. Bye-bye.